Now, before we lift the first Torah, this incredible Torah, I want to give Barbara Coleman an opportunity to share the legacy, the story of this Torah and how it weaved its way through the generations, now here to our congregation. It's my honor to call upon Barbara Coleman.
On November 24th, 1967, my father, Alex Berman of blessed memory, proudly carried Sefer Torah MST 202 down the center aisle of Congregation B'nai Torah in Highland Park, Illinois, to its place in the new ark of the new sanctuary as congregants and my family watched. Today, I have the honor and the privilege to carry this Torah to its new home in Congregation Beth Yeshurun, Houston, Texas. The journey of MST 202 has been long yet remarkable, and hopefully will end here in Houston. Sefer Torah 202 is on permanent loan and is safe. Sefer Torah 202's journey began somewhere in Eastern Europe, where it was written at the end of the 19th century. It is a Kabbalistic Torah as identified by the characteristic script. Prior to World War II, this Torah was housed in the Ark of the Weiskirchen Synagogue in Hranice, Moravia. Hranice was a small town in Moravia in the Eastern Czech Republic, where Jews lived from the beginning of the 17th century under a special decree. In 1938, the Munich Agreement was signed to appease Hitler, resulting in Germany absorbing the Sudetenland and Slovakia becoming a separate state. Moravia became a German protectorate along with Bohemia. When the Nazis occupied Czechoslovakia during 1939 to 1945, synagogues were closed and laws were passed dehumanizing Jews, as well as ordering the deportation of Jews to Theresienstadt as a way station to the death camps. In 1942, the Jewish Museum in Prague wrote a letter to all Jewish communities in the protectorate, instructing them to send their possessions to Prague. The Council of Jewish Elders supervised the collection of the items, among them 1,800 Torahs, mantles, silver, and etc. The men cared for the scrolls, tying them with talitot and linen, tagging them with identifying numbers, and carefully storing them in 14 central buildings. After the war, the communists again closed the synagogues, and the scrolls were sent to an old dam warehouse, the former Mikla Synagogue on the outskirts of Prague, where they slowly deteriorated. In 1963, the Czech government was looking for foreign exchange and contacted the State of Israel to see if they were interested in purchasing the scrolls. An American art dealer in London, Eric Esotric, who worked with the Czech government, was contacted to see if he would buy the scrolls. Estoric contacted Ralph Yablon, a philanthropist and founding member of London's Westminster Synagogue, who agreed to buy the scrolls. The 1,564 available scrolls were brought to London, arriving February the 7th, 1964. Many needed to be restored before they were usable. Sofer David Brand of Israel approached the Israeli embassy to see if he could find scrolls that needed to be repaired. He was directed to the Westminster Synagogue and began a lifelong career of restoring the scrolls. The Memorial Scrolls Trust was established to care for the scrolls and see that they were distributed to synagogues all over the world. Later, the Trust established a museum in Knightsbridge, London, where over 100 scrolls are displayed with over 400 binders and wimples. Rabbi Sholem Elkanan Singer of blessed memory, a leading Kabbalist in the United States, heard about the trust and contacted my father about bringing a scroll to the young B'nai Torah. My father readily agreed to sponsor a scroll, and one was brought by Rabbi Singer to B'nai Torah in fall 1967. My father, who fought in World War II in Europe, made sure the Torah was properly dressed with silver and mantles. He added the original tag that the Torah wore during the war, which he preserved in acrylic and hung around the Eitz Chaim to ensure we never forget what had happened. B'nai Torah closed its doors in 2014 and sought me out and asked if I would like to have the Torah and give it to my synagogue in Houston, as both my parents had passed away by then. A series of mishaps occurred, resulting in the scroll being stored first at North Shore Congregation Israel in Glencoe, Illinois, and then taken to Temple Sholem of West Essex, New Jersey, under the care of Cantor Kenneth Feibush, a volunteer with the U.S. branch of the Memorial Scrolls Trust. A chance Devar Torah by Rabbi Strauss on mysticism last fall, a project at Beth Yeshurun, and a question to Rabbi Horowitz reignited my search for the Torah, which my daughter and I had not forgotten. Jennifer Sutton was instrumental in finding the scroll and putting me into contact with Susan Boyer, another volunteer in California. As it turned out, her uncle and my father served together in the same Army unit during the war. After hearing the story, all of my emails to the trust were located and arrangements were made to bring the Torah to Houston. While Beth Yeshurun already had a Holocaust Torah, special permission was granted since there are 3 minyanim here, each synagogue only being allowed 1 scroll. The silver which belonged to the Torah was found at North Shore Congregation Israel and shipped to Houston by the senior rabbi, Wendy Geffen. I already had 3 of the mantles. The 4th was covering the scroll when it arrived. The Nazi tag was still around the Eitz Chaim, as was the breastplate that it wore when it was put into the Ark in 1967. This Torah has a special place in my heart, as it stood sentinel when I married my husband Del and at the funerals of my parents. It was used for the B'nai Mitzvahs of my first cousin's children, as well as a witness when my daughter Sharon was named. May we never forget the journey of Sefer Torah 202 and the lives lost as a result of man's inhumanity to man. Shabbat Shalom.
So at this time, to dedicate the Torah, I'd like to call upon Barbara's husband, Del, and her children, her entire family, grandchildren that are here, to come stand here next to Barbara as we dedicate this Torah. The tradition gives us a few things to do to dedicate a Torah. But first and foremost, how meaningful it is for all of us here at Beth Yeshurun to have this Torah dedicated by the family that's made all this possible. So again, we thank the Coleman family for giving us the blessing of keeping the legacy alive. People often ask, how is it that the Jewish people are still here after centuries of tragedy? And I think one of the reasons is given today by your dedication, by your family's commitment to our Jewish tradition, to keeping the Torah alive. That truly it is today, it's Chaim Ki, a tree of life for all those who hold fast to it. So the tradition gives us an opportunity first to read a few texts that reminds us that the Torah is truly, truly the reason why we as a Jewish people are still here. Because as Abraham Joshua Heschel once said, the Torah is not the wisdom, but the destiny of the Jewish people, not our literature, but our essence. And as we read in the Pirkei Avot, whoever engages in the study of Torah for its own sake achieves a host of merits. Moreover, it was worth creating the world for such a person alone. That person is known as a beloved friend, lover of God, lover of humanity, a joy to God, and a joy to humanity. And everyone in Israel is told to think of themselves as standing at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. We can, in a way today, imagine what it's like as we receive this Torah. For us, there are past and future events, but not so for God. Day in and day out, God gives the Torah. As today, God has given us the blessing through the Coleman family to receive this Torah. And now, merciful God, endow us with discernment and understanding. Grant us the will to study your Torah. May we here at Beth Yeshurun continue to practice the Torah's teachings and lovingly fulfill all its instruction. And now I ask the congregation to please repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamelamed, Torah, La'amo, Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Amen. The Torah is a tree of life for those who grasp it, and all who uphold it are blessed. Its ways are pleasantness, and all its paths are shalom. Help us, God, turn to you, Adonai, and we shall return. Renew our lives as in the days of old. As we now on this Shabbat morning, on this last day of Passover, formally dedicate this Torah to be part of our Torah tradition here at Beth Yeshurun for generations to come. And let us all proudly say, Amen. And now, as we dedicated this Torah, let us rise as Dell lifts the Torah.
Yisrael, al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe.